An alien object of unbelievable destructive power is less than 3 days away from this planet.
Permission to come aboard?
Science Officer Spock, reporting as ordered, Captain.
Kirk Unit, disclose the information.
Voyager. Voyager. Voyager 6.
You heard it up top. We're back here on Normies Like Us, boldly going where no man has gone before. Venturing in space, because Stardate it. Check it out. Get ready to hear us talk about the one, the only, the first of a lot. Star Trek, the motion picture. Here on Normies Like Us with your hosts, Colin Bones Brooks.
Nice. I like the alliteration. I almost had a panic attack, but then I just got Mike Karu Sulu. That'll work.
Ooh.
I'll keep it simple.
Ooh.
Mm.
And this is Jock. That's a mix of Jacob with Spock.
Jock.
Dr. Jock.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Lieutenant Jock, whatever my title
Lieutenant
might
Jock. Yeah, okay. Science officer, the most logical of all beings. Well, Jock,
Right.
why don't you explain to us kind of what this mission that we're embarking on is? This kind of came out of that logical little brain of yours.
be. Yeah, that's right. So basically, this is the start of our ongoing mission, which will be probably a monthly reoccurring series in which we're going to embark on the journey of watching every Star Trek mainline movie from this one probably all the way through to Star Trek Beyond.
Mhm.
And we're going to do one a month for however long that'll take. Right?
Yep. So today
Get ready.
Yeah, and this is the first one, obviously, the motion picture.
That's right.
Yeah.
You
kicking
know
it
a
off.
movie is going to be good when it's got motion picture right in the title. You know,
Don't you
Well-
no confusion of what you're looking at.
Yeah, it's not a slideshow, though it feels like the slow motion picture at times, I tell you what. But we'll
That's
get into
true.
that.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to talk our histories with this movie. We're going to talk a ton about this film, Star Trek, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
But I did want to do like the check-in. Again, what is your relationship to these people we are seeing in this movie?
The original series.
The
Yes.
OGs, the
We're
Star
talking Kirk. We're talking Spock. We're talking Bones.
Bones,
Dr.
Scotty.
Bones McCoy.
How come,
Mhm.
Jacob? Tell me, do you what? So, did your dad watch this or anything?
No, actually, my grandfather was a big Star Trek fan.
Hmm.
And when we visited him, he used to have TNG on all the time because that would have been syndicated reruns or something. But
Yeah.
But for Grandpa,
when it comes to the original series, I'm not that knowledgeable. That's my one blank spot when it comes to Star Trek. I've seen all of TNG, all of DS9, all of Voyager, some of Enterprise. That's another one I need to finish. But the original series, I'd seen some episodes here and there, but I've never gone through, watched everything. But for this and for the movies, I have never seen any of the original series cast movies. So
wow.
yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this as for me watching the first time for all these, so I can get my first reaction. Some of you guys maybe have seen some of these before.
Well, young man in theaters, did you go to by first contact? Were you going to a Star Trek movie or anything in theaters?
I've seen a couple of the Picard, the TNG movies, but I don't think I saw them in theaters.
None in theaters.
That would have been mostly 90s. I think Nemesis was 2002.
Yeah.
But I just wasn't into Star Trek at that time in my life. I was watching The Phantom Menace,
Hell yeah, dog.
Star Trek's an old man's game,
You were out here with Xander Cage riding your pod racers, not worried
Scorpion.
right?
about
Yeah.
Spock and Co are doing.
Exactly. But for this mission, not only did I watch this movie, I've been watching a bunch of original series episodes using PP Plus. We should say, Normies, if you want to follow along on this mission, you can watch all of these movies on PP.
Yeah,
PP Plus.
PP.
Also known as Paramount Plus. And so I've been watching TOS episodes all week to get a little more familiar with these characters and their dynamics, their relationships to each other, and all that. So
Very cool.
yeah.
For me, the original series, I've been referring to watching series as playthroughs now, so just deal with it. So I've done one complete playthrough of the original series. Yeah, not a speed run. That's when you fast forward it. So I've watched every episode of the original series once. and I've seen every Star Trek movie at least once, a couple of them more like Wrath of Khan and stuff, but I've only seen this one time prior, and I actually ended up watching it twice for this. I watched the regular cut and then didn't retain any of it, and then rewatched the director's cut, and that's where we're at now. But I'm familiar enough with Kirk and them, but I don't love TOS. It's not my favorite era, but I have seen every episode and the movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I'll kind of catch myself up on Star Trek as well, because if you haven't listened in a while, we've covered a bunch of Star Trek stuff, but everyone's relationship is a little different. I got into Star Trek in my mid-20s as a background show. I have done at least between 3 and 5 playthroughs for everything in the TNG era.
Yeah.
I have seen a couple of the movies, maybe, but like I'm talking, Colin, you remember this is like, oh, you're watching TNG? Let's put on this movie where I can't even remember what happens. It's just like 2 a.m. Oh, you need something to like just be on the TV. Here you go. This is the random one that's on Netflix. Yeah. Relationship with TOS, I famously, I don't think you need it. I think you could just throw it in the garbage. I'm sure there's validity to all of it, but to understand the universe, I just don't think it's necessary. I don't. Even watching this movie for the first time, I thought like, oh, you're checking in with people who haven't seen each other in about 10 years, and they're refreshing you on their relationships and where they are. So even without that kind of context, like, it didn't hurt my my viewing of the movie, I guess.
Joe, if I could slightly have a comeback to that. Basically, I would say it's not necessary. Like, obviously, you can enjoy TNG and the other Star Treks without having seen that. But I think for the era it was in and for how it pioneered kind of the whole genre of sci-fi and with Star Trek in general, I think it's important sort of historically, the show.
Yeah, but it's not as entertaining, I would say. I agree with Joe's point. Like, I would rather start with TNG, like if I was introducing someone to it today, but it's good archaeologically that obviously TOS exists.
Yeah, and I want to say,
as someone who's done like 8 playthroughs of The Twilight Zone, I'll take my morality tales in ancient television from that show.
There you go.
I've seen like clips of TOS and I understand it. I just it wasn't something I was going to go back through.
Sure.
I watched Enterprise again instead of watching TOS.
Yeah, actually. Enterprise, Stan, let's go.
But I will say, you know, I'm a relatively newer Star Trek fan. I mean, I've always been more of a fan of TNG and stuff, but just recently in the last couple of years, and I think even when we did our first Star Trek episode back in the day, I don't even know if I was on that episode, but that was I'm probably a much bigger Star Trek fan now than I was, because just the last couple of years, I've become a really big fan and watched a bunch of it. But with original series, I have to say, I feel like some of those episodes are really good for the era that it was in. I think, you know, there's some bangers there, so I was impressed. I didn't think it was going to be as good. Certain episodes are very hit or miss for me. But and obviously the production values and stuff, things have changed a lot over time. But if you've watched all the other series and you want to, you know, be a completionist, I would say definitely check out the original series.
For the legacy,
and
but
the animated series. Don't discount the animated series, which is something
that's my plan
also
after
seen.
this. Yeah, after I finish the original series,
and then we'll get the animated movie if that ever existed. Famously too, though. You know, Colin wasn't too huge on Star Trek at the start of this stuff either, and so where are you at on your journey, leading us into these movies?
This is the weird territory, Mike, where like I think I've said in those past episodes of like I didn't really mess with Star Trek, but to counter what Jacob said, you know,
you've seen all the movies.
You just weren't going to Star Trek. You were saying, divorced dad who's just like looking for something to do. My first James Bond movie, embarrassingly, is like Tomorrow Never Dies. Like this era, you know what I mean? Like the time I'm picking up to just like, it's a genre, it's a brand, it's anything we could go to. I'm hopping on for Star Trek. Like the one before the Tom Hardy one, where it's like they're on a planet that reverses their age. Like,
it's like Malcolm McDowell. Yeah.
No, that's
Generation.
Oh, that's Generations.
No, I'm talking.
That's right. He's
we're
trying to go to
we're almost
Nirvana
at the
dimension.
end.
That's a different
First
thing.
Contact or Insurrection.
No,
Insurrection.
Even past that, maybe Insurrection.
Probably Insurrection. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
And
With
I gotta
the
say,
skin people, right, Colin?
maybe but don't remember a
We'll get
thing
there.
about it,
we'll
guys.
find
I'm
out by
excited
the
to
end
get
of this
to it.
journey.
But it's just what it was to a young kid who was just like seeing just that. That's all I knew about Star Trek at the time. I was like, this is madness. But my dad loved it and did have the relationship enough of it to, if when we were young, like really young, to pull us away from homework at the age of like 8 or 9 years old to when the Sci-Fi Channel was actually called Sci-Fi, SCIFI
Correctly
channel,
spelled, more or less.
and showed Star Trek like in marathons, essentially what Paramount's doing now with their app or whatever. They would do the old episodes, and he very much keyed into, come here, I need to show you this, sit down, these are called trebles. And we'd watch the whole Trouble with Trebles, okay? Or Space Seed, which is a very important episode for the next one of these that we'll do, that we'll talk about.
Right.
I was very familiar with who Khan Noonan Singh was by the time I had seen that movie, just because my dad was a nerd and he was obsessed with, we used to tape Late Night with Conan O'Brien to watch before school, like in the morning, and he would kind of like work out next to me while we'd watch it.
Yeah.
And Tom Hanks was the guest on Conan one time. And the anecdote they had set up was Tom Hanks was obsessed with James T. Kirk. James T. Kirk's the best character who ever existed. He says, you mean James Tiberius Kirk? He says the middle name. My dad immediately hears that. I think in my lifetime, I have heard him retell Tom Hanks telling these anecdotes about liking Star Trek like 5 times in my life. So that's
awesome.
what it is to me. And then like the Kelvin movies and stuff. You know what I mean? Like I don't mess with Star Trek outside of a little DS9 that Jacob got me into that I love.
Yes.
The occasional, TNG here and there. I hear you got the Inner Light, recently, which, that's a cool, fun thing. But you're not diving in and doing full playthroughs.
No, I just, I'll throw it out again. I leave my Pluto TV on the Star Trek channel. I leave when it's a different Star Trek in the day, and it's an Act 1, because you guys know the 5-act structure of Star Trek. So I get the first act of an Enterprise, I come home to the 5th act of a TNG, and it's great.
That's a great...
It's interesting, the Kirk is the greatest character take. I think this is a generational thing, right? The Kirk versus Picard, a very famous debate in sci-fi history, right? Who's better? And pretty much anyone younger than 50 will probably say Picard, right? But the boomers and, their parents freaking love James Tiberius Kirk, right?
But the thing that shocked me, Jacob, I asked my father very recently, who is your favorite character on Star Trek when you were growing up? Because you have to remember, a kid when he was watching that original version, right? Like,
right.
It's like us. It's like younger versions of us now watching the Marvel movies. You're just like, oh my God, this is blowing my mind, right? I said, who was your favorite? And he said, you have to understand, Spock was like Spider-Man. He had superpowers. He was like different and stuff. I was obsessed with Spock. I said, wow. But the reverence, Jacob, you're right, that he has for the man that is James T. Kirk. And I think we're going to talk a lot about what that masculinity means in this episode.
Oh, man.
Sure.
And we are coming into this movie now. The show's canceled. One of the only of 2 Star Trek series to get canceled. The original series, right, that kicked this whole thing off. That's why we're here now.
Right.
It's been over a decade since there's been any Star Trek on TV. TNG hasn't happened yet. And this is the first thing that Star Trek fans have been able to get for a while, and coming off the heels of Star Wars. So I say, let's talk about this thing, dive into it. What we teased in the beginning might have almost killed the franchise. See what we thought about it. Star Trek, the motion picture. I can't say engage because that's not from this era. Let's get moving, team.
Teleport. Is that what
Teleport.
You say?
Not so.
We're back. We're talking Star Trek. We're investigating some sort of mysterious event that's reaching out to my fellow normies like us here for more information. We'll dive into that in a little bit, and first sort of set up what is the state of Star Trek before we get the motion picture.
Right. Yeah, so like Mike said, the original series was on 66 to 69, 3 seasons. It was, had a sort of cult fan base when it was on, but it wasn't super widely watched. And by the third season, viewership had dropped to a certain level where the network was like, we can't make this anymore. So it got canceled.
Firefly of its day,
Yes. And while it did have somewhat of a fan base when it was on, it really became a cult hit after it was canceled. It was on syndication, and that's when it got really popular in the 70s, right? So canceled in 69. All throughout the 70s, Roddenberry's like trying to bring it back. They have the animated series with the full voice cast, but he really wants a new show. So he's developing this idea for Star Trek Phase 2, which would have had the whole returning cast minus Leonard Nimoy, because Nimoy and Roddenberry had a whole thing going on. They were sort of feuding on and off, financial reasons and for different reasons. But Nimoy almost didn't come back for this movie as well, but they were able to convince him eventually, and it turned out great for him, I think. But so Star Trek Phase 2 TV show. They had 3 new characters that Gene Roddenberry was developing. 2 of them are in this movie. Decker, Captain Decker, or Commander Decker, and Ilea,
or officer,
right?
depending on how demoted he's gotten by the end of this.
Right. And Ilea, the weird bald lady who's a Deltan, which is an alien race that I don't think got really developed after this movie, to my knowledge.
They're mentioned like in an Enterprise episode. It's like in an anecdote. Like they're not really brought up in Star Trek again. You're right. They're maybe mentioned like 2 or 3 more times. Yep.
Yeah. So it didn't really catch on, the Deltans, but Ilea was a big character that he wanted to introduce. And then the third was a new, younger Vulcan character that would replace Spock, named Lieutenant Zahn, who got scrapped for this movie once Nimoy decided to come back. The other 2 are in this movie. But the other thing is kind of the foreshadowing to TNG, because these characters were all brought back in some way in TNG. So Decker became Riker, Ilea became Troy, and Zahn became Data, the logical guy from TNG. Right?
Oh, because like it's implied that Ilea has like she can heal like physical pain or whatever. Like she has some power.
She becomes a robot by the end of the movie.
By the end, but that's a mechanism. That's different. But the actual character has like an alien power similar to Troy. So I could see that translation happening.
I feel like
right?
they made the Betazoids based off what they were trying to do with Ilea and the
Delta. You could see that,
which would make sense. I mean, Delta and Beta, like the phonetics. Damn, like he was doing on purpose.
And biggest brains, dude.
Will Decker to Will Riker. I mean, come on,
Yeah, true.
So some interesting stuff there. But basically, so this was all being developed for Star Trek Phase 2, a TV show. Episodes were written. I think like 13 different episodes were written with scripts and everything. Wow. Eventually, Paramount decided, you know what? Instead of a show, let's do a movie. And so this movie is a heavily rewritten version of the pilot script from Star Trek Phase 2. So there you go. So that became a movie.
My Lynch heads out there. That's Mulholland Drive. Started out as a TV pilot. It was 3 episodes that got edited together into a very weird movie that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's something Hollywood does pull off from time to time.
And the other thing is that Paramount originally had planned to make Star Trek Phase 2 their flagship show of their network that they wanted to make. And that legacy lives on with Enterprise, which Enterprise and Voyager Enterprise premiered on UPN, which was Paramount's new channel that they were trying to, and it was the flagship show of UPN. So kind of interesting how that legacy lives on in different ways.
And Paramount's still like loving the Star Trek IP, obviously today with there's like 6 shows on Paramount plus PP.
They don't have a lot aside from that, so they really have to go hard with the Star Trek.
I mean, I would say like the legacy continued into P Squared. Like you had Discovery and Twilight Zone were the reasons that you would have to get that streamer. They were the only 2 things that existed on that streamer.
And Discovery started on CBS All Access, which was this streaming site that nobody wanted to get. And now it's on this Paramount Plus, which is another streaming site that nobody wants to get.
So let's say behind the scenes even further. Star Trek was a show that always did broadcast on CBS, one of the original 3 channels, of course, like basically the original networks. But it was produced by the company Desilu. We know who Desilu is.
That's
it's
right.
Lucille Ball.
Desi Arnaz.
They are selling it basically to Paramount. So this movie, this is Paramount's swing at Star Trek.
Okay, yeah.
This is them sort of coming in. And the thing we need to talk about, this is 1979. What happened in 1977? A Star movie makes every movie studio executive lose their minds and basically say and scrap these plans for a TV show, like you're saying, Jacob, because the dollar sign becomes people go to a thing with star in the title. We have the original thing with star in the title, you fools.
Right. Exactly. And which is funny because the movie that ended up being made is really nothing like Star Wars. And if they had leaned into the Star Wars harder, maybe it would have been a better movie.
Can you imagine?
Man.
Yeah.
Knowing that it was a pilot originally, I think like peppers it so well. Because if you look at any Star Trek pilot, TOS I can't speak to, but TNG, Voyager, Discovery even, and DS9, the pilots are always like 2-hour episodes that are extremely convoluted and introduce you to giant like otherworldly elements that kind of just like fade into the background of those shows after a season.
They're setting the game board out for you, and then we'll talk about them later. Yeah.
That's very true.
I'm thinking about the Bajoran gods. Being
That's exactly the emissary.
Exactly.
That's exactly.
They're usually not very well received. Along with usually the first season of a lot of shows is not very well received.
TNG,
Just like this.
Wow.
Right. But the Desilu thing is very interesting, Colin, too, because, and this is a little trivia that you can use in the future. Lucille Ball was a huge believer in Roddenberry and his vision for Star Trek, and honestly, probably Star Trek would not exist today if it wasn't for Lucille Ball. So, just a little fascinating.
Legend continues. Yeah.
We love Lucy.
We'll jump to the future a little bit to say, when this sale occurs, it's not like he's out of the equation. He is coming with it. I am the shepherd of Star Trek. I'm Gene Roddenberry. I created Star Trek. Of course, I'm going to be the guy in charge of this movie.
That's
now,
right.
Not to say anything about the quality of this film, but this is basically the last Star Trek thing that Gene Roddenberry kind of like has full control over.
Yes. He was very in control of this movie creatively, and when it was not well received, they kind of, for Wrath of Khan, they're like, kind of took it away from him. Yeah. Which is interesting because and he had a lot of ideas about TNG that after his retirement and death, like they kind of were able to do more with the series with DS9 and stuff, and probably prolong it as a franchise. But
But this is the movie we got, the first one, and again, it has this convoluted history of being a TV show, then, Star Wars is popular, maybe we'll just make a movie, because I saw that even the woman who played Aaliyah, she signed like a 4-year contract before this. Now all that's like out the window, like you're just going to do one movie.
Never seen
Declan and Aaliyah did sign like 4 or 5 year contracts, and then all of a sudden it becomes a movie, and so they were a little disappointed, but...
Which might be the perfect segue to bring us into the movie, because the first scene is basically literally Kirk walking up to Decker and saying, "This is my movie now. Get the fuck out of here."
Well, I just want to mention this movie was directed by Robert Wise, right? Roddenberry got this guy Robert Wise to direct this movie. Who is Robert Wise? Well, he started as an editor. He actually edited Citizen Kane in the 40s and was an editor in the 30s and 40s. Became a director. And
it's a wise decision.
He directed West Side Story and The Sound of Music in the 60s. Both films won Best Picture and Best Director Oscars.
Damn.
So Robert Wise is a 2-time Best Director winning director. And he also did The Andromeda Strain in 1971.
Another one of the most boringest sci-fi movies.
Yes. So they're like, who are going to get to have
Which is a Michael Crichton novel. Just I want to note that for the Jurassic Park fans. Great book.
But a lot of the crew from Andromeda Strain returned for this, including Douglas Trumbull, who was the special effects guy. He's a legendary special effects guy who's worked on 2001, The Space Odyssey, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Blade Runner, and this movie. So that's where like the probably the best part of this movie, the visuals, come from, right?
I would say
yeah.
those for sure, Jacob, but maybe, because you guys told me a trivia fact about this, but maybe the score is the thing that goes on to live the longest.
That's
from
also
this.
great as well, yes. And
Oh, wait.
Horner, is that who
And
we
the
have?
fonts.
his name's Jerry Goldsmith.
Jerry Goldsmith, who did
Yes.
Alien, of course. A great.
And he
Jerry
went on to do a lot of different Star Trek shows, like the themes for TNG, which is the theme from this movie became the theme from TNG. They just liked it so much, you kind of rearranged it.
Which
Yeah,
I'll tell
yeah.
you, like, having never seen this movie, sitting down on a Saturday night to watch it on Paramount Plus, firing it up, and the first thing I hear is that score, I was like, oh, let's go, man. I'm here for it. This is what a treat I'm in for.
Yeah. Well, it didn't turn out that way. Well, I want to mention it is weird looking back at it, just that opening credits scene, because the fonts, introduced on the opening credits would end up being reused for DS9. So when you put this thing on, it looks like TOS, but then it has DS9 fonts and then, TNG score.
Sounds
And it's
like
just like,
TNG.
I'm
You
confused
see a
as
lot
a
of the
Star Trek
building
man, but I'm
blocks.
excited. Yeah.
Yeah,
So a
you
lot
see
of this
the
stuff
building
stuck.
blocks of this series, of the franchise going forward.
That would outlive
Even the
this
first
film,
scene when
yeah.
you see the Klingons, the new Klingons for the first time
Yeah.
with their makeup.
Amazing.
They're basically TNG Klingons, and the Klingons did not look like that in the original.
Kirk's
series.
crew never encountered them like
Which
that.
I was so stoked on that too. Again, like it's like the first 3 minutes are the best part of the movie because like there's still hope.
Let's go with those reactions. So we talked about where this movie came from and how it was made, what the fuck's going on with it. To my first time boys, Jacob and Joe, what the fuck did you think of this kind of notorious movie? Did you kind of know about its reputation too, even going into it? And what were your first thoughts?
I did know about its reputation as like not the most popular one in the series, and I know that it was supposedly sort of slow and boring, which I can confirm is those things. Yes, it's very it has pacing issues. It's slow. It's confusing. It's very talky. But I would say the best things about it we already mentioned: the score and the visuals. And when it's those two elements, that's when I was really into it. Most of the time, though, it's pretty not great.
Joe?
Please do not ask me to tell you a single thing that happens in this movie or the plot or the effects that it has on the world. I was not really aware of the reputation, to be honest. When I think TOS movies, I only think of Wrath of Khan, which I've seen clips of. Again, like, I'm so familiar with other elements of Star Trek that, like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I was pleasantly surprised to see the Klingons because I was like, oh, that's TNG, or I wonder what other kind of stuff we're seeing. And I kept waiting for, like, something to happen. And I also know that, like, we bleed into Generations at some point, which, like, that timeline, I'll have to see how that makes sense in my head. So, like, I was kind of hoping to see more, and not like TNG cast members or anything, but just like iconography in general, because they set you up like with the Klingons. So, like, having seen it already, like, I was pretty excited.
Dorn will play a Klingon at one point, but not Worf. Interestingly, in
Oh
one of
yeah.
the TOS movies.
I think it's a peculiar decision that after 10 years, this is the first live action Star Trek we're getting. It's a movie. Everyone's super excited. What are we gonna use for our plot? What's our story gonna be? And this is what they went with. And to me, it's sort of a very mid episode of the original series. Like, there's episodes of the original series that are better than this movie by like a lot.
Well, what's
right?
the inciting incident essentially? And that's basically the whole plot is what is thing, right? Oh,
yes.
Why is it always a thing, Jim? Anyway. So what
we have
happens to
this
the Klingons?
killer
Yeah.
Something
space
weird
cloud
going on.
right?
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have this. So these Klingons run into this killer space cloud. We don't even know what it is at this point, and it's just moving slowly towards Earth, killing anything in its way. Essentially,
Sorry, real quick, but Joe, you say you don't know the plot. I would argue that's because the plot is a guy getting in his car, turning the key to the car, putting that car.
Well, he's
in
walks
drive,
around and kicks all the tires for 30 minutes first.
Yeah, exactly.
Checks the air pressure.
Like, the
It
plot is like
starts.
experience.
It starts with such a bang. Like, it starts.
Yeah.
Great music.
Space.
Action with Klingons. Oh, you're gonna meet your heroes again. Kirk walks up and is like, "Hey, you're out, buddy. Sorry, I'm getting the band back together." So you like kind of have that drama immediately.
well, even before that, Joe,
I was into it, and then like
I would say even before that scene with Shatner, We get introduced with Shatner. He's an admiral now, Kirk.
Yes.
We get a 6-minute long scene where he takes a shuttle. Him and Scotty take a shuttle from the
man.
base to the ship.
All right,
Whatever.
guys, let me just say, this is again one of those moments. Is it boring? Incredibly.
Yes.
But
Yes.
they built an 8-foot
Yes.
Enterprise, and
Yes,
it's really just
yes.
porn of
Yes.
this
It's really to
model
show
that
off
they've
the
created.
model,
Yes.
show off the
And-
effects.
And it's 10 years
They're
since
the
Jim's
size
been
of
on there or
cars.
whatever.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and they're just shooting the shit out of them. So hold on. We're talking first reactions. Now, Mike, you've seen this a couple times.
Yeah.
Now, you are doing comparative, which is the greatest thing in the world. The director's version, not the director's cut.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
obviously very long dead, but
Mhm.
this upgraded 4K restoration, right?
Yes.
Is this edited? Did you notice a difference in these sequences? What is your reaction?
So when I
to
watched
it?
them both, it's only like 4 or 5 minutes longer. It's really not that much different.
It's longer.
Yeah,
No,
I
you
did
can make
that
it
voluntarily.
longer.
I watched it twice, guys.
Oh.
But there were scenes that were added in for the TV edit, and then those were put back in to the final release, and then that was in 2009, and then they did the 4K restoration recently for Paramount Plus. So it's
Okay,
it's
so I
only
did
been
not
available on
know-
DVD.
I didn't know about this director's cut on Paramount Plus, so I just watched the normal version. So
Well,
hopefully didn't
I
miss
watched
out.
normal one, and then I searched the motion picture, and then there was this. Here's a director's cut. Maybe it was added like the
might
day
have
after you watched it. I could have been like the first day it was out, but anyway, it's just as boring as ever. I don't like
Yeah.
this one a lot.
Right, it should have been
but I-
shortened if it's the director's cut. They need to be fixing this movie.
No,
No,
they
no, make
added
longer.
to it.
No,
That's
they
the
need to
Hobbit
make it
principle.
6 hours long.
We
and
need
then,
more shots of the Enterprise.
Do a black and white version a year after that.
Yes. Now, let me pitch this, guys.
Chrome.
It's a laser light show. If you were on a ton of drugs and just
Oh, yeah.
watching
Yes,
some of
trippy
those shuttle
visuals.
sequences, and
My
it's
favorite
just
thing about it.
IMAX, yes.
There's
But-
good
They're
model
giving it
work.
too much credit, man. The Fantasia was doing that. like
Well, here's
you know.
this brings me to my take about it, which is this movie wasn't going for Star Wars. This movie was going for 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? That's was heavily influenced by that movie.
Yeah.
Even that slow scene of the Enterprise is the slow space scenes in 2001. Problem with that is, Stanley Kubrick can do that because he's Stanley Kubrick. He's a genius. If you're not Stanley Kubrick, it's a little harder to pull off, right?
You're also
Yeah.
not signing. You're signing up for a Star Trek movie. You know what I mean? Like that's like people are excited for a Star Trek movie.
But I get where they're
Right.
coming from with the production value of this, the effects and the models, so much better than the original series, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
leaps and bounds. The new improved Enterprise interiors even are just so much nicer. So they really wanted to show off everything, and that's why you had that slow build up where they pan. They have the reveal of the whole ship, and I can see the appeal of that with the score and everything.
Especially
It's
if you've been
really
waiting
beautiful.
a decade to see any Star Trek content. We're meeting these
Totally.
characters where they're at in their lives. Oh, there's the old ship, but it's a new ship, and let's take it in.
Yeah.
It's just
Totally.
boring.
That brings up like a really interesting point, and I've been racking my brain about it because I don't think I cannot think of a single example. This would be like, it was a TV show,
Yeah.
and then a decade later, we get a new piece of media with all of those main characters explaining where they are.
Community.
Right.
Yeah, that 6 seasons in a movie hasn't happened, but like maybe it would be like if Buffy ended in 99 and then in 2009 they were like, oh, here's Buffy, by the way.
Twin
like,
Peaks: The
I can't
Return.
think of a single.
Well, it's a
And
show
I
that
What are you doing?
They're
here?
not. I get it. There's not an exact analog. Like even Serenity isn't the same comparison because the timeline isn't
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Exactly, and
also
also
at
the
the
timeline is what's so fascinating because TOS you have young Kirk who's going hand to hand with space reptiles. This
Serenity's
you
in
have
a
an admiral with an attitude, like,
and that's what's fascinating about this series, right? So this is the first in a 6-movie series where the main cast is already like middle-aged by this point. Like, Bones McCoy is very old in this movie.
Hey.
He's only in
And
the
he
middle
did not want to be on this mission.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, how dare you?
No, I love Bones
There
McCoy
are
though. He's like my
6
favorite character.
TOS movies.
Yeah.
He is my
Yes.
favorite. Do you guys have a favorite original Star Trek character?
I do.
Bones
I
is my
think it's Bones because I've been watching,
Bones.
and everyone talks about Kirk and Spock.
No,
Bones
yes.
is the most underrated character on the show.
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jacob.
He's also
Bones was
outwardly
funny, he made me
racist
laugh.
towards Spock. He calls him a green-blooded
Well.
hobgoblin to his face.
Well,
so
that's all right.
I can't really, condone that. But
He's
what
the
this
sarcastic doctor with the heart
Yeah,
of gold.
he's
He's always
got-
looking out for people.
Mike, are you
he's
a
getting too
Spock
old for this
guy?
shit. Yeah, I like
Who's
Spock.
your favorite? Really?
Yeah, just because he's. I mean, Kirk is good, but
Sulu?
Spock is, Sulu doesn't
come
get as
on, when
much to do on
Bones
the
shows
show. Sulu
in this
does
movie, he
take
is
off his
not
shirt
that
and
guy.
fence. Movie Sulu doesn't
That's
get
true.
much. Yeah.
When
Movie Sulu,
Bones showed
future
up, though,
movie.
that was like one
Yeah.
of the only
Yeah.
times that I
When
was
Bones shows
remotely
up with his
interested in him.
'70s beard,
They
and his
drafted
70s
me.
clothes.
Dude, fucking
Insane.
tell me about. We're gonna talk. I'm gonna do 30 minutes on the fashion, but we will get to that at the end.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Joe, are you a Kirk man? Who is your favorite character in the original?
I-
Scotty?
He doesn't get much to do in this movie.
He does
Yeah,
not.
I don't know. Like, I'm viewing it through the lens of like what I know about these characters.
Mhm.
I've seen them in the Kelvin universe.
Uhura.
I've seen clips, and I know like their legacy. Like the legacy of Kirk inherently like has me a little drawn to him because he's like, he's Cisco's favorite captain. How could I not like be
Yeah.
interested in him? You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I hated him in the movie. I thought he was like.
Yeah.
Like the attitude is not earned at all, in my opinion. He doesn't seem like a good dude.
Well, the other thing is,
Jones
Joe.
was the only one when he showed up. I was like, oh, okay, he's funny. I like this guy.
Yeah.
He seems like
DeForest
he's in a
Kelley.
different movie than everyone
Because he hates
else.
being in a Star Trek movie. He's the only one who's like, it's stupid to be in space.
Mhm.
Well, what's
I was on
interesting about that,
Ryza.
this movie had a lot of rewrites as it was being made. It was getting heavily rewritten, and a lot of the actors say like a lot of those rewrites came basically to make William Shatner look better. This movie was very based around making Kirk like this amazing guy, and to the expense of every other character. And the original series, so it's an ensemble, right? TNG, every Star Trek is kind of an ensemble,
Mhm.
but this one, the original series, is really about Kirk, Spock, and Bones, and the rest of the main cast is sort of minor characters. They don't get developed a lot. They
Yeah.
don't get like anything to do in this movie, right? This movie is very Kirk and Spock and Bones, and that's it.
The only thing
Mhm.
I can think about the other characters in this movie is the one scene where like, Kirk walks in right after he's gotten Bones and is like, hey, everyone, Bones is here. And the rest of them are just like kids in a playpen who are like, oh, look, dads are
Yeah.
home. Like, they're finally here.
Sulu
Yeah,
and
even-
Uhura and Chekhov.
Well, what's
I think
They'll
interesting?
get developed later, but they really are still
Not
kind of
really.
background, like featured background characters.
Right, and so we see that they're still serving on the new Enterprise. They just happen to be there, but it's Bones, Spock, and Kirk, and Spock's not even there in the beginning either. You know what I mean? And so it's just weird to be like, oh, half of you are still enlisted and just doing
Right.
it up, and then half of you are retired or an admiral. But when Kirk comes on there and the guy's like, "Want me to show you? I think I could find the bridge ensign." It's like, okay, well, fuck me, Kirk.
Super
Right?
smug,
Sorry for
super
trying to help you.
confident.
He's
Right.
such an asshole.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
such an
yeah.
asshole the whole
He's
time.
at his height.
And
And
that's
not even like in a cool boy way. He's not
Sit
like,
down,
"Ugh,
Spock."
I'm a cool boy. No, he's
Yeah.
literally like, hey, I'm taking your job because I just want to hang out with my buddies. All right, so like, don't be a bitch about it. Like, I'll give you another pay cut. You talk back. Like,
Right.
holy shit, he feels like a boomer.
That guy gets
really
demoted
reflects-
twice. Deckard gets demoted twice in this movie. Once
Yes.
when he takes over, and then once when Spock shows up, he loses his second rank.
Come on, we're
He's like-
bringing in all the old cast. But
Yeah.
it really
He's like,
reflects Shatner.
I was the
Obviously.
captain. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess this isn't mine anymore. I'll play tambourine on the side.
Yep. Yep.
If you look into the
Stephen
making
Collins,
of this
not a good
movie at
guy.
all, Kirk's character really reflects Shatner's influence on the set. All the other actors are like begging for more characterization in the script, and they keep taking out their moments and basically giving them to Kirk and building Kirk up. So that was another Roddenberry thing where he really wanted it, to be Kirk focused. When they took creative control away from him, I think they might have made it more of an ensemble. We'll see, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump way ahead, but like I feel like Kirk's arc in the motion picture, what they were trying to accomplish, is what the Kelvin timeline actually accomplished in Beyond, which we will get to very first and last.
Oh,
here.
I love that, Joe.
Also,
Okay.
and you get him younger too. Before you jump ahead, can I make a joke to transition ahead?
Yeah.
Great.
No, I mean that was literally the only point I had to make.
Oh, great. Well, I think
I
this is a
feel
good
like
time
this
to.
is trying to do something, and 40 years later, we actually got it.
Maybe they do it. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm just saying because this is a long, slow kind of setup. And I want to mention the other character that we talked about was Elia, right? She mentions when she gets on the ship, she knows Deckard, and she says to Kirk, "What's up? I'm from Delta. I have signed my oath of celibacy. You'll find it in the paperwork."
Yes.
I looked this up. Apparently,
I know
Deltans
this.
are so attractive that they will just what?
And I think Kirk says something like kind of hitting on her, and then she's like, "Don't worry, Captain. I've signed my oath of celibacy."
Right.
You guys said you don't know anything about them. I believe they are a super sexual subset of aliens. And let's just say Gene Roddenberry has like what I would describe Joe Biden energy, which is that he's like a menacing older perv.
So what I'm
with Roddenberry,
hold on, you just unlocked like a core thought process for me here.
Mhm.
The Delta whatevers are the prototype for the Betazoids. The
Yes.
Betazoids get married naked, and the mother of Deanna Troi was played by the real life wife of Gene Roddenberry.
Wow.
So Gene was also a swinger.
Majel Barrett, who's also in this movie.
Yeah.
As Dr. Chapel, formerly Nurse Chapel, of course.
But
But the thing is with Roddenberry, for his time, he was very progressive for his time in a lot of ways. But his attitudes towards sex was very much, yes, please, the more the better, and the weirder the better.
But good Austin Powers reference. No, but the thing too is like, if this was going to be a show and that's how the character was, like we're just going to have a character that everyone is just attracted to for no fucking reason, and they just got to deal with it. It's going to be a weekly problem. She's just too hot, you know. And it's just weird that a movie that opens up kind of putting this horny note out takes 40 minutes to get itself out of dry dock. And with that, we'll be back right after this on Normies Like Us.
We're back. We're talking Star Trek, the motion picture. We're talking original Star Trek. We're talking all sort of Star Trek. But Commander Mike, you just said one more character we had to talk about, talking about Ilya.
Yeah.
No, there's a huge other character we got to talk about. His
Right.
name is V'ger.
V'ger. We get the mechanism. Yeah. Jacob, who's V'ger?
Are you ready to receive? Yes.
Carbon
Send
unit,
us your data.
I'm done studying here. This room sucks.
Yeah, so
Download.
first of all, the Ilya character doesn't last long as an actual character because she's killed and turned into a probe for V'ger to communicate through. Is that what we're
Is she
killed? No, she's completely.
so.
It's a mechanism perfectly replicating even our tear ducts.
Yeah.
So
It's like
they
Superman
killed the
4.
actual Ilya in order to do that, right?
yeah, Ilya's
Or 3.
dead.
I don't know.
Of course, in the end, they kind of disappear into a bunch of light and turn into a higher being or something. But
In true Roddenberry fashion, once we found out you couldn't have sex with her, why keep her alive? It's like
No, she
literally
right.
it's like, eh.
which
Well,
also
it's
brings
good.
us to the other character, Decker, who was in a previous romantic relationship with Ilya, or they had some kind of
He
romantic.
was stationed
history.
on her home planet. Yeah.
Yes.
On Delta.
Notoriously played by a notorious sex pervert, Stephen Collins, the
Stephen
father
Collins,
from Seven Heavens, right?
Wait,
child
Seven Heavens a
predator.
bad dude?
He's been.
Yeah.
We won't even talk about him anymore.
Look
but
it up if you want to know
important-
the shit. Bad guy.
Look
yeah.
it up. But important
Nice.
to what Jacob just said, he is the first parent to star in one of these Star Trek movies. He will not be the last. We will be seeing the mom 4 movies from now. So
Oh,
get ready.
from Seventh Heaven.
Hey, can I take a pause here to tell you something I didn't know? There
Yes.
are 6 TOS
There are
movies.
6. Yes, Joe.
Oh
are you
man, that
excited?
really bums me out.
Hey,
Yeah.
No, let's go back. Let's go back and
And
say
3
this.
of them are directed by Shatner or Nimoy.
Yeah, well, yes.
So,
well, the
when
good
I-
ones are directed by Nimoy.
when the credits on this movie rolled, it tried to get me to watch Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And
Not
I was
Wrath
like,
of
why the
Khan.
fuck are you not trying to get me to watch Khan right
Oh, it
now?
did that
which
for
is,
me,
like,
too.
The
That's
actual
weird.
sequel. I don't understand why you're
Yeah,
jumping
Plus
to
is a
the
mysterious-
last of the TOS movies. Whatever. No, you guys just blew my mind. There's 3 more. Does that include Generations?
No, it does
That's
not.
the
But
7th.
That's the 7th. We didn't even
Just
include
let
that.
me
13 Star Trek movies, Joe. That's the
There
thing
are,
about
there
that.
are. So I have a
Yeah,
weird
I didn't know what I was
nostalgia.
getting into.
for
They drafted me.
I like these 6 movies. I watch 5 of them a lot. A lot of the times I skip this one to start things out. And I think I hear from fans that a lot of
people.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
and I think
it's
Wrath of
cute
Khan.
in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is the movie that almost killed the franchise, and then
Yes.
Wrath of Khan saved the franchise.
Yes.
So
So what
It
is
is
it
what it
about this movie that almost killed it? The boringness? Because essentially what...
So boring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
no
a
one's
boring
like
TV
that.
plot episode that they turned into a
There were
2-hour
no
movie.
toys.
It feels like a mediocre episode, right? Yeah, it's not even that arresting.
Everyone acts so strange to me. Like, even like, I know I haven't watched TOS, but like, I know the relationships people have. I've seen clips of Khan. I know how reactions are going to be to certain things that happen. Why is everything so cold in this movie? It is.
Can I take a swing at what this movie's trying to do, perhaps?
Yeah, please.
So what we get is V'ger, right? Is this satellite mechanism? It's like a technological entity, and it's searching for the creator, and then we later find out, oh, it's a Voyager probe that got assimilated basically with technological beings. Yeah, and it's trying to get back.
Basically
home or
went to the
whatever.
Transformers planet. and
Yeah,
they-
yeah.
They made it super smart or whatever, then they sent it back to us.
And then it's because its programming is to return the data. So
Cybertron, yes.
I guess simply put, right, V'ger is like trying to find home, right? And then like Kirk is like, I'm not at home behind the desk. I want to be on the ship. And then where are my guys? So it's like, so everyone's kind of not where they're supposed to be. And it is the message about getting home, and is that for getting the band back together? Even, because Spock was on his home planet doing something else, but he's like, know what? I can't purge all emotion because my dudes need me, and is that, I need you, Bones, deeply, and it's like, is that kind of the thing? It's boring, but is that the theme?
Again, I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago. That's the point of Star Trek Beyond. Like,
yeah,
it's just way more interesting because Kirk's not like a cold asshole. He's just like going through his it's essentially about existentialism is what we're talking about here, is the wandering life, right? The life unexplored. I feel like Beyond just you're right, Mike. You're right 1,000%. I just feel like it's so much well executed, that idea literally at the other side of this journey.
There's a lot more motorcycle in that one too, which I like.
I think I think a big problem with the movie is the pacing, right? If you tighten up the pacing, and so people complain about the lack of action, it's basically a movie of people reacting to things on screens and then talking
and
to
cutting
each other,
to models and matte paintings. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the things with people
There's a big
is
set
bad.
piece at the end when they go see V'ger and discover what V'ger's true identity. But other than that, it's a lot of them just on the bridge reacting to things.
Which Khan is like that too, but the script is better.
And the other thing is there's not a
and we'll get there.
true villain. The villain is V'ger, but it's not a strong villain for the movie, which Khan would obviously provide. So it's like it didn't have a strong hook. It doesn't have a strong villain. To me, the best part is the trippy visuals, like the sequence when Spock takes the spacesuit and goes inside V'ger.
Inside the orifice?
Inside the orifice.
Right.
And that was a really dope scene of just some trippy light show stuff. And I was into that. But otherwise, the plot of this movie is just not very interesting. It doesn't sustain a 2-hour movie.
Right.
It's interesting, too, because this is like, when I think of Star Trek movies, the complaint I usually have is when I'm thinking of the ones I've seen, which is like part of the TNG era, right? It doesn't feel like Star Trek because everyone's fucking rolling around and shooting phasers nonstop, and
the TNG
takes his
movies
shirt
are
off for no fucking reason. Like,
yeah, it's a very different tone than the TNG show, right?
Yeah,
and
way
I feel
different.
Like my complaint is like the opposite in this, where it's like, well, it's a movie. You couldn't give me like a little something instead. It just
and that's
feels
the
like,
balancing act, right? Where it's like, and they would figure that out with later movies, hopefully. But this one is very much like it's almost like a TV movie. Like this was obviously originally supposed to be a TV show.
With a $10 million effects budget. That's it.
Yeah.
In 77, $10 million. Keep that in mind.
And they were showing off the effects, which for the time looked awesome. Obviously, the space action doesn't look as good as, Star Wars, but
I see like this working because I had to watch it twice. Okay, and like nothing happens, but like shit does happen. Like. Yeah. Kirk's like, we got to get the fuck out of here. I don't care if it's not ready yet. And as a result of that, 2 people die in a transporter because it's not ready.
Right.
They fucking almost blow the ship up, and with that trippy light show, like shit is going wrong, and he's just never held accountable for it. There's one scene where Decker's like, you didn't know what you were fucking doing, and we're in danger. But like that should have been the thing. Like you rushed this, Kirk. You got all cocksure.
It makes sense.
And you got 2 people killed. We almost blew up the whole ship, but that was never played up. It was just like, we're just cool and calm, and next thing's happening. Like there's no drama.
Yeah,
it's fucking
it literally
boring.
makes him more of an seem like more of an asshole because he just shows up, takes command from
he's
Decker,
so
Gets two
unlikable.
people killed, and then
two people
nobody
killed,
says
yeah.
shit.
Uh,
Yeah,
doesn't
and
know
he's
that-
bad.
I like the macho cheesem like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like I like that about. I like the strut, if you will.
Right. But back
this
it up.
is not that. This is just like, I don't know if you're out of practice, but this is like we're meeting this character 10 years later, and it seems like he's seen some shit since we last saw him. But then we find out that no, he hasn't. He's just been like sitting at a desk.
Well, again, it's
5 years.
a weird starting point for a 6-movie series to have the first one be he's like a middle-aged admiral who wants to go back to being the captain of a spaceship, right? When he's been in
Picard
a desk job
season
for so
2.
long.
Longing.
Looking
Yeah,
at you.
it's literally like
Can you
Picard
imagine
season 2.
in
Yeah.
1979 for
Good
having
thing to
like
copy.
the problems are that I wish I could go back to when I wasn't in this high powerful position. Like what fucking boomer energy this whole movie is.
Man, I wish I could go back to
100%.
digging ditches. That was the life, man.
Yeah.
I don't like sitting behind
mean,
this desk getting paid.
And
this
I'll
is
tell you
the
right now,
boomer
like
cast.
I don't want to like you can't compare this movie to any other movie, but the special effects like they're fine. They're fine. Richard Donner's Superman came out in '78.
Yeah,
it's better. It's a lot better and a lot more revolutionary.
And Star Wars
Star
still
Wars
better.
Came out in '77, and it's much
Yeah.
better.
And 2001 is better.
And 2001
I mean,
came
like,
out in '69, and this
It's
is
still
a porn
better.
of 2001.
The effects in Star Trek, the motion picture, like they're not that bad. But like,
No,
no,
no.
it's the plot and everything. But I don't know, like there's just something about it, like it just doesn't. It was a disappointing start.
There is something. There's something telling that the greatest praise we had was the special effects, and even those, while good and technically impressive, are not first in class. Let's say.
No.
They're good.
No.
They're not
Again,
first in class. Yeah.
Douglas Trumbull, who did the effects on this movie, made movies with better effects, like 2001: A Space Odyssey. He
They
did
had
Blade
ILM
Runner 5
people
years
too
later.
on this, like some old ILM
Yeah.
people who transferred over.
So you can
and
see
shit.
the start of something here, and it certainly is a huge upgrade from the show. You know, a lot of technology improved from '69 to '79, right?
Yeah, that's.
Mhm.
I'll throw it one last compliment. The one last thing I said I wanted to highlight, which is the costumes.
The karate
Now,
dress.
There is a lot of flowing white garments, Mike, but
Mhm.
the variety
A lot of khaki.
of different outfits, a lot of khaki that we get in this film versus the cotton pullovers of the original series, right?
The much more brightly colored,
Yes,
gold,
different
yeah.
colored shirts,
pastels,
yellow and red.
60s were completely blown out. This is
Yes.
end 70s, baby. We're kind of going to end up having a white t-shirt V-neck that shows off our chest more than anything.
Mhm.
Incredible, fantastic. But the way Star Trek will go literally because of the next movie, which again, I hate to keep saying we'll talk about it, but
Yeah.
again, it's our next one is literally we're talking about quote unquote the biggest Star Trek.
The only one you've heard of,
But
listeners.
Exactly. But the fact that they take the bend of this is naval, think of this as a submarine, and all the
Right.
outfits become these militaristic fashions that will then go on for the shows to then reflect what the second movie introduces.
Mm.
These are the only two properties that are free of that, the original and this first motion picture.
Mm.
And I like the versatility. I mean, Spock has a dark cloak when he's doing like a
Yes.
ritual on his planet in the
Oh,
first.
your compliment
Yeah.
for it is that it's casual day. That's
It's-
like,
yeah, it's
that's
like-
I
a
actually want to say
compliment.
about the costumes.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't like them as much because the
Wow.
redesign from the original series uniforms, what I liked about them is the color codedness, and this is what TNG would kind of
Yeah.
perfect with their color coded uniforms.
Yes.
They take the
These
red
movies
shirts
might
and the
go
yellow
away.
shirts. It becomes more of an insignia on their white or gray shirts. But to me, it's all too bland because it's just white and gray everywhere, no color.
Really, your rank it is military. I mean,
Yeah.
But I think TNG would kind of perfect the idea of the different departments having different color shirts, like yellow for engineering, red for security, or whatever.
It's
While
yellow for
also
security
having more
and-
detail.
And yellow for
security,
engineering.
Reverse
blue
it.
for
Yeah.
science.
Yellow
Red for
leadership,
command.
yellow for security,
red for
yellow
command.
for science, yellow for tech.
It does change. Yeah,
But
it
I hear what
changes
you're
for
saying.
fun.
Yeah. Because in the original series, it's blue for science, and stuff. So yellow for
Right.
command. So
But my point is that
it doesn't look like the original show because that color
No.
is absent, right? Even if
and
you
they
mute
wanted
it.
to kind of redesign it, but I just feel like the white and the gray, it's too much. And then even the interiors of the Enterprise are very bland in color and stuff.
It looks padded.
Yeah. And again, I hate to be a TNG. I think we all favor TNG here, but it's just the design is just better.
And if I try to
favor,
meet,
like,
go ahead.
well written sci-fi in any capacity. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I've been on a huge sci-fi kick. This series couldn't have come at a better time. It just like Mike said, starts in dry dock.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
And the reception of this movie not very good. People said kind of a slow start to the Star Trek movie universe. So with the next one, Roddenberry was taken away from control a bit. Some other creatives came in and sort of totally saved the franchise.
Well, before we get into maybe final thoughts here in a little bit, I want to mention, I'm trying to approach this movie on its own terms of like how would you look at it? Because I've seen all of TOS as a TOS movie, and because Jacob said, even do the costuming, it doesn't feel right, even though we're 10 years in the future. Like I wanted the colored costumes. It's a very brown Star Trek, right? Which is not as fun, I guess. And this movie just isn't fun. I guess that's a problem too. In the original series, it's a little bit of camp. There's morality tale, obviously, but this is just, it's a little too somber. Like, it's just kind of bummed out, and there's no levity. You don't feel good at any time except for the first 3 minutes.
Soft and comfortable, Mike. The clothes reflect that.
But I have heard it described as like the perfect Sunday afternoon Star Trek. Like, you ain't got shit to do, and it's on TV. Like, I'll get my blanket and just
put it on in the background.
If I had a 70-inch TV, can you imagine putting on some of those going through to meet V'ger sequences?
Firing the torpedoes,
Richard Donner's Superman, I think, is like a crazier experience. Fantasia is a crazier experience. Like
Twister.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, I think
I was trying to old. Like, I'm trying to keep it like, I'm not trying to be like the effects were bad. Like, lots of my favorite things are pre-79. So
Again, I think the design was very much of its era, where the 60s was very much a naval ship kind of attitude. This feels like more like the 70s modernism, which is very minimal, very muted colors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You guys are also giving it way too much credit. Star Wars had come out, and it was mostly on a desert planet where people are wearing brown robes.
Dang.
Colin just put a joint out as he walked onto camera to say these lines. Doesn't that kind of have like the vibe the movie's going for?
Yeah. Again, I think it's a poor man's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, there's just, I mean, let's find out what we think about it, right? Is that a good time? Final thoughts? Let's do that. We'll catch you on the other side. We'll hit you with it. V'ger. Someone's got to merge, and it's not going to be me. That thing's weird.
Kirk unit, give us the information.
I'm ready, V'ger.
Zap Brannigan, right?
Yes,
he was obviously
that is
Kirk.
So let's jump in right now. We're talking Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I had just brought up Normies. If you haven't seen it, there's a Futurama parody called V'ger of V'ger, the lead character from this film. And Jacob just so rightly said, Zap Brannigan, as performed by Billy West, is a James T. Kirk impression. I mean, down to the sexual swagger, right?
Even a staccato cadence.
His way of talking, which is very unique.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Admiral uniform matches what we see, at least by generations.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we get those red. Oh, that's another good one. But it's like the dress one.
Yeah.
But for sure, it's a reference to Kirk, and Kirk, he always gets like the womanizer thing, but like really he doesn't. He does it in the original series, but it's not like all he's about. He is like, he outlogics a computer to kill itself because he's outlogics it. Like, he makes a computer kill itself because he's smart. Even,
as a captain, like, people think, oh, he's just the womanizing, like, bravado guy.
Punch first, kiss. He has
he's
a little
pretty
more
competent captain in the show, right? He's pretty good at his job.
I don't think he's underrated at all. Like you said, if you ask anyone over the age of 50, it is one of their favorite pop culture characters of all time. Right. And in universe, everyone's obsessed with him.
Well, because Kirk, if we look at the way Kirk's portrayed, if we look down the line in the Kelvin universe, like, it's doubling down on his, You know,
Yeah.
his arrogance and his womanizing. But like in the original show, he can be very pensive and philosophical, and he does have a little more gravitas than I think he gets credit for from the casual kind of normie culture fan.
He's a confident man with a little bit of swag, and people love to put them in a box. I would know,
yeah,
It's
totally.
interesting you say that though. If Griffin Newman, podcaster, has pointed this out before, if you watch the Chris Pine SNL episode where they do a Star Trek episode, basically like a parody, you see him do. Like, he is Kirk in that. And it's the understanding is he could have just been doing that impression the whole time. It feels to me like there's some distance there. But let's even talk outside of it. I just said John Wayne. I want to say Elvis. I mean, there are these just like swagger.
From this era.
White guys. Yeah, like you don't want to say that part of it. But like this archetype that kind of has hit the road that... I guess I would say James T. Kirk is my favorite of. This isn't my favorite movie of his. And Jacob, are we going to rank these out of 6, or are we going to do all 13 at the end?
That's a good question. I mean,
probably when we get through these,
we can rank them separately. Yeah, we can do the first 6, and then when we get to the end, we can rank them all or something like that.
Yeah.
I know that this isn't my least favorite original series one. It's one of the later ones that we're going to talk about, maybe directed by this maniac we're talking about.
Can't wait.
Now.
Great.
If we did put it out of all the things, this one is going to have a soft spot where I think I would put it a little higher because it just... Like Mike said, this could be a Sunday hangout movie. I agree with you, Joe, that there's 20 other ones I might put on first, but like now I do feel bad starting those runs where I didn't do this one first because it's quaint enough where I just want to see Nichelle Nichols' hairdo throughout all 6 of these movies. Like just anything I can grab onto. I don't know.
Yeah.
James T. Kirk archetype was perfected with Indiana Jones, and it hasn't been
Boom.
better. It won't be better.
I like that.
And it also hasn't evolved, and I think this is the real problem with that archetype. It hasn't evolved since Futurama was making fun of that character. That's basically what has continued for the last 20 years.
Chris Pratt is that in Jurassic.
We have himbos now, which is this new term, the he bimbos that people put out there. Where it's like, I agree with you, but that's a little different. What Chris Pratt, Mike, is doing in Guardians is a little, again, because it's kind of more...
I was saying Jurassic World.
Jurassic World,
but no, I say any Chris Pratt role. You know what I mean? Like the swagger that he's doing in that is a little different than the macho... It's like,
but I also think an underrated.
It's like he's putting on a facade, but Kirk is like, I'm the man. Yeah.
An underrated part of Kirk, though, is that these are all kind of younger comparisons, whereas by this point he's like a middle-aged man, and with each movie he gets sort of more and more of a gut, and it's just he's a representative of the boomer generation.
We need looser and looser shirts.
Where he's very macho in the original series and very svelte at that point, but then 10 years go by, he likes a good.
Those residuals.
We should say in the movies with the toupee, he decides to go curly for all these films when he was straight in the original series. I don't understand that choice at all. Just use the same toupee.
Gives him a distinguished look, perhaps, but yeah.
I don't know.
So luckily we got 6 more of these, counting Generations with Kirk and friends. So hopefully no one dies. It would be really sad if any of these main cast members died.
That'll probably never happen.
Probably never happen, though.
If they do, they won't be brought back.
Definitely not. That doesn't happen in Star Trek. I'm just trying to think. This is such... It's not the worst one, because I've seen them all. But it is boring. But the score is enough. Like, if literally put it on in the background, because the plot, who gives a shit? V'ger wants to get back. All right. Good job, right? But the score and the visuals are enough to leave... You can watch it, just don't pay attention to it.
It's a record.
I agree with you guys.
Yeah, it's a record.
If you want to put it on and really focus on it the whole time, it's not very good. But if you put it on the background, you got the score and the visuals, you look up, Spock's going through an acid trip inside of a giant living machine. Yeah. That part's fun, So I could totally see that.
And you got this society that predates the Borg. Like, what about a machine society?
Right.
Like, okay, we'll get there. Seeds are being planted,
it
at least.
bums me out so much that the people who have seen all of these are like, well, it's not the worst one. I'm like,
No, it's not, Joe.
that's a
Get
bummer.
ready.
I was kind of hoping this would be the worst one.
Nope.
Well, it still got going faster than a couple of the Transformers movies did to get to the main plot, so we're still in good shape as far as I'm concerned. But I guess we have twice as many.
Right. No, this will be
Yeah.
fun for everyone. I'm glad that Joe's
Yeah, I
super
am
into this.
Well, at least it's not
It's gonna
every
be
week.
fun
You get a
for
breather,
everyone.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the next one, I mean, super stoked on the next
Oh,
one.
here's a
You know
little
what I
reading
mean?
for our homework for our listeners and even us. Watch Space Seed. Watch the
Space
episode
Seed.
Watch
that
the
introduces
introduction
Khan
of Khan.
Noonien soon, and then you'll have the backstory for the next movie. So if you're listening to this, you want to catch up within the next month, watch Space Seed and Wrath of Khan. That'd be the way to do it because that's the TOS episode related to it directly. So that's a good note.
I'm
I have one
excited.
dumb anecdote, and it's from when Scotty is talking to Kirk, and he's like, "It's going to take me at least 6 months to get this put together, And then he's like, "I really need it now." He's like, "All right, it'll be ready in an hour," And it reminds me of when he visits the Enterprise in TNG, and he's like, sometimes you just got to tell them it's going to take twice as long, and then when they tell you to hurry up, you get it done quick. He's telling Geordi
That's
how
a
he would always
classic,
lie to Kirk, and I'm like, he
yeah.
could be fucking lying right now because he knows how to. Like, Kirk's going to give me a hard time every hour. He's gonna be like, "Where are we at, Scotty?" So I just tell him 4 times the real amount of time, and then bring it down.
And anyone who's done like freelancing in real life or anything, like that's a great tip. of,
Under
like-
promise, over deliver.
Exactly.
Your hours. Who would have thought? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, this will take 2 weeks, and you turn it around in a week. Like, wow, you really busted
And
ass.
they're really impressed. Yeah. If you
Yeah.
Pad your hours and enjoy a good scotch every once in a while.
Absolutely.
And you know who didn't go on a life-threatening mission? Scotty. Yeah. So be like Scotty.
he lived to be like 150 because he appears in TNG.
He does.
Like,
He
Yeah.
lives forever.
I don't know.
Be like
I'm super
Scotty.
excited to see how some of this stuff ties in, man. I guess I'm shocked that there's. I guess I could have Googled. That would have
Yeah.
been something before you do a podcast. I guess
It can't be that many.
there's 6. I thought the search for Spock was. I thought it was the search for Spock,
Halfway.
Oh no.
Generations, and then you
wish,
go
buddy.
into the.
We got. And can I say,
The next
3 of
10
them
years.
are a trilogy, where you're like, oh, these 3 movies are all tied together. They're like, yep, we wrapped up that one. Let's start 2 more. And you're like,
No,
what?
there's 6 original series movies. There's 4 TNG movies, including Generations, which has both Kirk and
Yeah,
Picard.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's 3 Kelvin timeline movies.
Yep.
Soon to be a 4th, December 2023. Mark your calendars.
ready.
Star Trek
Mhm.
4. So,
The 4th one.
Normies, we're glad
Yeah.
you're coming on this journey with us, our continuing mission. And I'm looking forward to next month and all the months.
Yeah. So,
after that.
Normies, we're changing it up a little bit. We're going to do these long forms like we always do. We're going to do like a Star Trek through line where we're going to keep kind of doing these the same time each month. Then other times we're going to do some long ones about like the whatever's new. that
Current
month.
events.
And
Yeah.
some other
Yeah.
just weird stuff we're trying out. So get ready for some switch up on the feed, y'all.
Yeah, well, we
Yeah,
mess with
we'll
the
keep
programming.
you swimming in content as always. But if you're missing us, you can always go back and check out our awesome backlog. Check out our video episodes on YouTube. Plenty of fun Normies content.
Yeah, and we have a lot of
That's
Star
right.
Trek episodes, Star Wars, if you prefer that, I guess. And yeah,
You fools.
Wars versus
Go-
Trek.
go
Like,
dig it all up.
subscribe, all that good stuff. It helps us out at normies_like_us on all social media. And we've been your hosts. This is Captain Colin.
Oh my, I'm Maikaru Sulu.
I'm Rolasta.
And this is Lieutenant Jock.
Jock. Yeah.
Mixed with Spock.
Jock.
Jock.
It's like a
Maybe the
really,
best version guy.
it's a Tuvix, but worse.
Yeah.
Bye.